Physical abilities such as strength, speed, agility, endurance, and coordination are fundamental in sports. But mental abilities such as focus, concentration, motivation, confidence, resilience, and decision-making can heavily influence an athlete's performance, especially when it matters the most. If you want the mental edge in sport and life, check out the Max Out Mindset for Volleyball book and workbook or the Max Out Mindset for Softball book and workbook. A guide for coaches, athletes, teams, and parents to help you be in the best position to max out when it matters the most. Go to www.maxoutmindset.com.
You are listening to Max Out Mindset with your host, Dr. Larry Widman, performance psychiatrist and elite mindset coach to women in sports, business, and life.
Welcome to the Max Out Mindset podcast. This is your host, Dr. Larry Widman, sometimes known as Doc in the Mindset World. I've got my partner, Jess Connect, here in her second year of being an elite mindset coach. And we're here today to continue on our series with the Max Out Mindset podcast. We're really lucky today to have a guest on that I've known through my connection with Waverly Volleyball since she was 16 or 17 years old when she transferred in there, and got to observe her as she's grown into a young woman here now, going to be a junior at the University of Nebraska. It's just hard to believe, as an elite volleyball player, second team All Big Ten past 2 years. She's hit over 300 both of her years offensively. She had 101 blocks her freshman year and went up to 158 blocks her sophomore year. You have no idea how hard that is to do. One of the true elite blockers in the world. We're going to get into her story later too as well, but she had 37 kills in the semifinals of the state championship game against Scott Catholic. That did result in a loss, but I think it shaped even and fueled her a bit. We're really lucky to have you. Rebekah Allick, welcome to the Max Out Mindset podcast.
Hello. Thank you for having
me. We're really happy to have you. So, Rebekah, my definition of maxing out is given the talent, the experience of the athletes, the coaches, the depth, the health, the intangibles of a team. Can they reach the limits of their capabilities? And then can they do it under pressure when it matters the most? Because what I always say is, if you can't do it when it matters, what's the point? What's your definition of maxing out?
Oh, man. I don't really think it comes down to one moment. If there's anything I've learned from last season, it was everyday routine and just decisions I would make throughout the week. And so I think maxing out it's more of a process. Like, are you really taking every day for whatever the end goal was? So mine was a national championship. And so all the way from January, I was trying to think of everything I could do to continue to advance to the tournament and hopefully get to the end.
Wow. Simple, but really hard to do, isn't it? As an athlete, going through day by day by day in January, when it's minus 20 in Lincoln at times, wind chill into February, March, April, and month after month, whether you're healthy, you're injured, whether you have the role you want or not, it is hard to stick with it day after day after day. What's been your biggest challenge then? You had this big outcome goal last year. You know, most people that listen to this podcast know that your team exceeded probably a lot of people's expectations, not yours. Made it to the national championship game where they lost, but your outcome goal, your big goal for your team was to win it all. You mentioned that starting in January of last year, you figure out ways to max out every day. What's been the biggest challenge for you to figuring out how to max out every day, day after day?
It has a lot to do with, like, what's your why. I think the hardest part was remembering why I'm doing what I'm doing, especially when things weren't going well. I had a couple of, I wouldn't really say injuries because I kept playing. So I guess just obstacles. I had a couple of obstacles with my body show up, and it just created a little bit of anxiety and fear and of what the future would hold if I was going to be able to continue to play at a high level, because I know I started the season really strong and then my knee started to flare up. And so I got really scared about what if this is the end for me. And I tend to spiral when it comes to injuries just because of, you have such a big goal. And in the sport, we need our bodies. And so I think just the hardest thing was not getting too far ahead of myself, kind of meeting whatever obstacle it was where I was at. And if it would, I guess, set me back, then so be it. But I still had a lot of time to work with. And yeah, I think just not getting too far ahead of myself when hit with an obstacle. But I'd say the monotony of every day, that comes down to your why. I mean, do you really enjoy what you're doing? And on the days that you don't, you fall into why you're there.
Before I turn it over to Coach Jess, tell us what you figured out about your why, and has it changed from when you were younger? But but what's your current why? Has it changed?
Current why, like to this very moment. I will say that even changed from last season. I couldn't even tell you what my why was last season, but I started speaking at schools and I started talking about my faith and just how the Lord has been working through me and my platform, and just being a woman of God and pursuing a sport where I literally play in spandex. It's not ideal, but I think my why has just changed. It's changed a lot. And for me right now, I'm playing more for my faith and the outreach. I mean, it's so ever since I spoke at Pius, I've had a ton of more schools reach out just wanting to hear what it means to be an athlete at a high level. How do you deal with setbacks, and where does Jesus come into the picture? And so it's been great.
Becca, there's a lot of people that know their why, and I'm curious, how did you get there and what was your journey?
I will say I know my very first why. It was all about me. I wanted to see how big of a name I could make of myself, and my faith was put more in a corner. It was kind of like this little thing I would tap into when things weren't going well. I'd be like, God, please give me this. And then I would just continue to do things on my own. And I was like, I want to have a bigger name. Jordan Larson has always been a woman that I've looked up to just for everything that she's achieved. And she's easily known as one of the most like BA volleyball players to come through this sport. And I was like, okay, I want to have a name like Jordan Larson. I want to be a big deal. And so I will say that like when you run into things that don't go well is usually when your why gets refined. Like, okay, why do I actually want to be well known? Okay, maybe that has a lot to do with insecurity. Maybe that has a lot to do with doubt. And so when you run into obstacles, you run into friction or tension. It could even be with your own teammates, and you feel a little isolated at that moment because you, I don't know, called people out, or I don't know, for whatever reason. And that refining process is when either the why gets resculpted or it gets narrowed down. And then from there is when it really kind of becomes a reality check. Okay, like, do I want to keep doing this? Say the pain continues, the isolation continues. Is my why going to be strong enough? Do I really love the sport? Do I really respect the grind? And that's kind of what happened to me. I will say from the time I committed, because I was so young, to this exact day, January 19th of 2024, it's just been this refining process. And yes, for sure, conversations with other people happened. My trainer, Jolene, here at the university, she has been, I mean, I think most trainers are kind of in our corner they're always in our corner when it comes to hard conversations. They almost always know the gossip and stuff like that. And so, but for me, she has always just been an outlet. I can always be brutally honest. Like I was talking about with injuries, that really is like an anxiety point for me. And I'm always able just to be like, Jolene, what if I had to quit volleyball? Jolene, what if like I just straight up just throw bombs at her because I'm like, what, like my knees, da 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 da. And she's like, Becca, let's just I'm gonna meet you where you're at. And so for sure, conversations of just brutal honesty, sharing your fears, sharing this and that, I think will help not only refine your why, but also build your why and maybe even redirect your why.
Did you ever decide to give up? Cool, I have my why. It's really great, and I know everything I'm supposed to say and think, but there's a moment where you had to pause and really dig deep, either lean in or lean away. What was that moment for you?
The only one that's really coming to mind was my junior year. When I went down with my ankle injury, it was against Wahoo, and that was when I was playing with Whitney, and there's just a lot of chit chat and chirping of, oh, Waverly's going to go all the way this year. They're not going to lose in the semifinals, da 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 da. And I think the severity, like hearing, I won't forget being on the operation table. I don't know. I think it was just like a regular table in a room. And he was like, yeah, it's broke. Didn't sugarcoat it whatsoever. He looked at the screen and goes, yeah, it's broke. And that shattered because I had USA coming up. It was, I think it was either U19 coming up or U18. I don't know. Just another USA season, and playing for my nation has always been a dream of mine. And so I was like, everything just seems too big right now. I mean, you try and do your best for high school, and then the next step is college, and you're trying to play and start at Nebraska, a team that I've, dreamt of since 8th grade. And now USA, where they reach out from your college and they pick the best of the best, and you're just supposed to hash it out in tryouts and then hopefully compete against other nations. I mean, I was like, what if I'm not to full capacity? I'm only good enough at full capacity. And yeah, there was a couple of moments throughout my career. I will say there's probably even some in college, but I can't think of any. But yeah, that one in particular, I was like, I don't know if I'm good enough. I don't know. What if I can't rebound fast enough? And what if by the time I'm healed, like I said, what if I'm not at full capacity? And so that was a really harsh reality check and a gut check of, how bad do I want this? Am I really going to invest in the process? Going to PT every day, regardless of the weather, taking it seriously, not going through the motions just because I genuinely didn't think I had that much time. Angie Evans, so Annika Evans' mom, she was my physical therapist here in Waverly, going through that. And some days I was super chirpy, and I was like, oh, this is going to be so great. Like, I'm going to go and leave here, and I'm leave back strong. And some days I was like, what's the point? We're not making any progress. Like, I'm doing the same stupid exercises. I want to be out of here. Why can't I train? Why can't I run? And she would just always meet me where I was at. And just talk me through it and just remind me that it's going to be a process. And I remember just being brutally honest. I was like, I'm so behind and I'm getting out of shape and I'm not able to do real exercises. And it was this mental trip. And so that was definitely a moment when I thought about walking away, but it was the support system around me that they kept me in, and I'm glad they did.
There's two things, Becca, that stick out to me. One is you took us back to your junior high school season. And it's interesting because your why has developed over the years, as you said, and it's refining moments. And there's moments where you really dug in and you leaned into your community. You leaned into the vulnerability of like, it's a good day, it's a bad day, and every day in between. And so I think our listeners really need to understand it's not just a one and done quick fix. And this process that you're talking about is so important. And it falls in line with our first C, right? The 4 C's of elite mindset is commitment. Can you commit on a good day? Can you commit on a bad day? Can you commit to your why when maybe you don't see the next step in front of you? And thank goodness, for Mrs. Evans there by your side, and Jolene, giving her a shout out there at Nebraska. You never know what key people will speak life in those dark days.
I love that she shouted out Jolene as well. Jolene's in her probably 22nd, 23rd year. I've known her a long time, and she does way more than just athletic training because of the role she plays in building things up with you. One of the things I heard you say that's also a challenge for you that she helped you with is that, yes, it is great to get out into the future at times in our thinking because you plan big goals, right? And you dream. But for elite performers, especially that are perfectionists, tend to spend a lot of time in the future worrying about lots of things that haven't happened yet, or what if scenarios, or what if I'm not good enough? What if I won't heal? And we tend to get pretty anxious when we are out in the future. It sounds like Jolene has helped you. One of the people that's sort of, hey, let's just focus on right here, right now. Let's get back to the present. Do you have other strategies? I'm curious about that help you. I always say be aware first, and I'm thinking way too much into the future before I have a strategy to bring it back to the present moment, whether it's worrying about what we've talked about or even in a game. If I made a bad play or a great play, how do I get back to the next moment? Any thoughts on how we be aware when we're into the future and bring it back to the present?
There's a couple. I will say there's 2 main ones that got me through the season, and especially postseason when stuff was getting hectic. My first one was prayer. Just what am I called to do in this exact moment? And just trusting whatever the Lord had for me. I can tell you right now, during Arkansas, when it felt like the momentum was shifting, I was like, all right, Jesus, if we're about to go out like this, just allow me to do my best. And every block from that moment was for him. And it was we just slowly sent them home. And it was such a great feeling because leaning into what has gotten me so far is going to pay off And like I talked about, like in those refining moments, you're going to fall into your why. And that was one of mine. Another one that I practice a lot was kind of like the 5 different sensations of breathing. And it's really hard because I remember just even closing my eyes and almost felt like the world got louder. And it's like I could almost hear now the thoughts in my head. And it's like everything was like this. And so closing my eyes was honestly the hardest part, just kind of getting into that space. But then I would literally just go through like different things. I'm like, all right, what do I smell? What do I hear? What do I see? What do I feel? And then the what do I feel was really like the clicking point for me of getting into the moment, because we would do visualization the night almost before every game. And I didn't realize how many different parts of my body would be on the ground. You always think it's just your head and your butt. You don't realize the different parts of your back, your heel, your elbow, your hand. I mean, and all of that. And then just being in that, you're now in the moment just from going from each point of your body. And so a really big one for me is because I'm very much so into the fundamental stuff, like stuff I can put my hands on. And yes, it was going through the sensations. And so that helped me a lot.
Wow. A lot to unpack there too, right, Coach Jess? But she's talking about the building blocks of an elite mindset, using visualization, using breathing that helps us with our arousal control, or getting us back to where we function at our best, and using all our senses, which are critical for visualization. And those are what help us with our 4 C's, like commitment. But commitment and confidence are really tied together. And the number one ingredient of commitment, as we've talked about, is putting in the work. Our last ingredient, which is number one for a lot of people, though, is spirituality, or what role God or Jesus or our faith plays for us. And you were like so many athletes we get to talk to that in some ways, it can become our most important ingredient of confidence that goes along with the preparation and hard work. So when people ask us, why do you put that on your list of ingredients of confidence, guys, at Max Out Mindset? Because it becomes so powerful, and you're just one more student athlete who has talked about that. I mentioned some of your stats early on, right? Obviously, just the blocking and the attacking, all the technical sport parts of your sport. And I'm curious about, in your opinion, what do you bring to the team that is what I call the non-technical aspects of our sport? The things that you bring to the team that help make the team better, that gives it a chance to max out at the end of the year. What do you think? Give us a couple of things that you think are unique to you that you bring to your team to help elevate performance.
I think my teammates would definitely agree with this one. I bring friction, and that's hard conversations. It's awkward conversations, whether it's about faith or different team goals. I guess also the team standard. There's 14 different women on the team. We all have different backgrounds. And I made it my goal my sophomore year, and moving forward, honestly, through the rest of my life, is just to be more honest when I don't understand or when I have a judgment. I'm going to try. And from there, we damage control. So if I make a judgment and I act on it because I think it's what's best, then I'm going to go from there. I'm probably going to hurt feelings. I'm probably going to hurt my own feelings, but at least I'm trying to do what's right. And in that actual moment, you can feel like the bad guy, or you can feel like this. But when it's with good intention, I really had nothing to lose, because I knew I was trying to do what was best for the team. And too many times I've been on so many talented teams where people will not talk to each other. They're upset about little things, and those build. And then when something actually does come up, there's all this pent up stuff. And then it's just a cat fight. And it's just like this, and no progress is made because they just want to be right, or they want to prove them wrong. And it just gets really nasty. And so I do my best to try and cause good tension. Just keep it really honest. The same way we would do with our family members. Sibling upsets you, you usually tell them right away, like, don't do that. And they know where you stand on that. And sometimes they do it just to make you mad. Some people will do things in our lives that we think they're doing on purpose, when in reality they have no idea it's wrong or it's upsetting you, and you figure it out. And so just genuinely trying to make an authentic and real space where sometimes we are going to disagree, but we're all here because we're competitive and we like to win. And just kind of meeting each other where we're at. Was it perfect? Absolutely not. There are so many conversations I wish I would have done differently. And thanks to Merritt Beeson like mother bird of the team. She helped me out. She was a great middleman and just helped me navigate conversations because, for example, I'm someone where if we stand on opposite sides, I'm willing to go toe to toe and we're going to hash this out. I don't need a third person, but I always thought that was like the respectful and honorable thing to do. And that still may be true, but that doesn't really matter because if the goal is for me to make peace with this other person, like actual peace, maybe bringing merit into the picture is what's needed. So let me put my ideas and my ideology aside for the sake of this thing happening, because all I really want is peace with this other person. Respect and all that stuff may come later, but we need a remedy for right now. And yeah, I think that's what I bring is I bring good tension. I'm willing to kind of say what I see, and sometimes it's not great. I will say I've lost teammates this way. I've lost friends this way, but I've also made really strong relationships from this. And yeah, it's just another refining process that I'm willing to go through and with my teammates. So sometimes it will kind of put me in the middle of everything, but it's all for good intention and just trying to create an honest space where we can call each other out and hold each other to a higher standard.
Coach Jess, that word friction, that is like the gem of the last 6 months to me. Like, what do you bring to your team? I bring friction. And I almost will play Coach Jess. She'll go, are you serious? Coach, friction actually helps a team? But I'm going to let you take a deeper dive into that because it's just so powerful.
On a successful team, you are telling us there's friction, there's conflict, you don't see eye to eye, you're not best friends, you can have the same goal, different ways to get it, and it's not easy. Mm-hmm. So audience and listeners, you're hearing from one of the nation's best middle blockers, right? Becca said she brings friction. So can you give me a little bit more of a perspective? Friction, meaning, for example, let's say something happens on the court. You're competitive, your teammates are competitive, you're both wanting to win. How do you handle a conflict or maybe a moment of friction? Right in that moment, how do you handle it on the court? If you can give us an example. Because, you only have, 8 seconds before that next whistle blows? Maybe not even that.
Yeah.
And then an example off the court. How would you handle it in the moment?
I will say when I have genuinely nothing nice to say, nor helpful, or if I am in a space where I'm like, oh, I want to be helpful, but I don't know what to say, I won't say anything at all. My main goal in that moment is literally just eye contact. When things were going absolutely south against Wisconsin at their house, I remember we all just kind of looked at each other and we just kept, the whole vibe was just like, just keep trying. We had everybody put in that cross shot from Franklin and she kept scoring. She was hot that night. And so, yeah, just the biggest thing is eye contact. When you have put yourself out there and you have caused friction with the team, sometimes all you really need is eye contact. But if you haven't gone through that awkward, sometimes uncomfortable process with one another, and in those moments, all you can do is look at each other, it can feel really isolating because you're going to go home and you're like, Mom, Dad, all they were doing was staring at each other. Well, maybe going through that process, you could have been in that moment. And when you looked at each other, you'd be like, yeah, you kind of get the vibe. You're like, we're going to do our best and we're just going to keep trying. I remember I just kept trying and I just kept getting burned. And it was very demoralizing as an athlete and as a blocker. But I knew my teammates were trying their best because I knew I was trying my best. And I know for a second they would not hold back for whatever reason. We had nothing to lose. Win or lose against Wisconsin, we had nothing to lose. So it was, yeah, sometimes I don't say anything. And sometimes I just try and make eye contact and do what I can to muster up positive energy, especially if I'm not feeling very positive in that moment. And which is really rare now that I think back to it. There was very few moments where I was like, come on, guys, do better. Little to none. Because it didn't, there was never moments where it was like, oh, it's just me out there. Yeah, I could easily count on by the time I wanted to say something, someone already did type of thing. So, yeah, sometimes, but in those moments, you can't really say anything.
Eye contact's powerful, and I think you just hit on that. We teach that every day, I feel like, at Max Out Mindset. Was there a off court example? Because you do life with your team. On court, you have hours spent, and then there's off court. How did you handle maybe an in the moment? And sometimes friction can be good. And
Right.
then sometimes your conflict resolution. What example comes to mind off court?
Off court, it could be like ideology. I mean, just like what we believe in. And some people have tension towards the faith. Some people could literally care less. I mean, that's usually what happens when God's brought in the conversation. And so, I don't know, really the only name I can think of right now is Merritt Beeson. She has done a great job with helping me navigate those conversations because she understands I'm passionate about it. And just kind of realizing when's too much, like Becca, read the room type thing. And so, yeah, not shying away from what I do. I still pray before every meal, and I make the sign of the cross, and it can be a little awkward, not even for my teammates, but other athletes, and just sticking to what's me. But if it does actually cause like conversation, just being super respectful and just an active listener, meeting them where they're at. The second that disrespect comes in the conversation, I'm gone, because I will not be taking any sort of disrespect towards my God. And so, yeah, I think off the court conversations, it's tricky because like not one conversation is the same, even if it's over the same topic. And so, yeah, it's just kind of really being patient and listening, because the second that it just becomes about like what you want to say, then it's just like talking to a wall. I mean, there's really no point in conversing if it's all about you saying what you want to say. And so, yeah, just really being patient, seeing where the conversation goes.
And Doc, I'm hearing a lot of mindfulness and awareness. Becca, this is something that you're going to be a junior, right? These are things that you're learning as a leader, but you've been learning throughout your years. And you mentioned Merritt a lot, but it sounds like you had to get really clear and vulnerable with a teammate. And one, respected her as a leader. Two, you trusted her to speak into you and vice versa. And number three, right, she's going to still hold you accountable to be your authentic self, but she's also going to remind you of like, hey, you want to be authentic, but are you allowing the other person that you're talking to be authentic as well?
Right.
And I think for you and that relationship with Merritt, you keep talking about it a lot. And so I hope that she knows the impact that she makes on you and vice versa.
The power of a teammate, though, right? I mean, at different times, different teammates can provide different things for us, and they can create confidence. They can help you resolve conflicts. They can help you be more aware of your blind spots. And you don't have to be best friends with everybody on the team. But my guess is that when she walked in the door a year ago, Merritt, I'm referring to, you had no idea she'd have that kind of impact on you. So you had to be open to building that relationship, exploring it, and with no necessary understanding what may come of it. But that openness, that vulnerability, that willingness to listen and decide, is she somebody that's going to be helpful to me? I can build a relationship with. So talk to us a little bit about mindset then, and because you keep talking about different skills that you have. Even Jess has said, you do a lot of mindfulness kind of stuff, but whether it's visualization, mindfulness, breathing, tell me a little bit about how you go about training that for you. Like, when did mindset become important to you, training, and take us through a little bit of an example of how you navigate that for maybe athletes or coaches that are trying to figure out, what is this mindset thing? What role does mindset play in overall well-being and performance?
Well, I'll answer the last part of that question. I mean, mindset is everything. You can have all the skills neck down, but if you don't know how to use it, there's really no point in having it. And so, and you even talked about, if you can't do it in big moments, then what's the point of doing it at all? And yeah, so that was just to answer that last part. But my mindset journey has kind of been from a really young age, just my obsession with the sport and wanting to be perfect and wanting to have a big name. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do everything that everyone is doing, and I'm going to put it into practice, and I'm going to be great. Well, that didn't really work out. I kind of picked and chose after time. I was like, okay, this actually does work for me. And mindset was always one of them. So I have ADHD, and I will say a moment that it really clicked for me as a performer and just as an everyday person with ADHD was mindfulness. So I believe it was May 26th of almost 2 years ago. Yeah, so this upcoming May, it will be 2 years. I had to go off my medication for USA training because instead of going to a psychiatrist, we went to a therapist, and so the papers weren't legitimized. And so my mom was like, all right, well, what you want to do? Like, you're going to have to try and do this and this and this. And I was like, well, I'm not just going to sit around and tap my foot and zone out while the coach is speaking, because I can't pay attention. He's not going to want to work with me. And then I'm just going to lose my position. I mean, USA is just a different standard. And I was like, I'm not going to let this get the best of me. And so I started thinking of all the different things. I can't remember who told me, maybe it was you, that doing mindfulness meditation, it actually creates different highways in the brain of how to cope with stress. And I was like, okay, I wonder if this can actually help with ADHD. And I will say, I don't know if it's like an actual study, but I would die on this hill that it totally does. Just the act of being an active listener, just not blurting, dozing off. I mean, I still kind of like doze off and like glaze over during class or something. That's just hard because it's like class, But just in an environment that I know I really care about, just being aware that, okay, I have this going against me. Okay, how do I work with it? How do I flow with it, type of thing. But yeah, from USA, I was journaling all the time. So I knew that I struggled with constantly talking about myself. So I journaled every day. I was like, all right, Becca, what do you want to talk about today? So I would talk about everything, me, because I wanted to be more genuinely interested in what everyone else was doing. And meditation, I did almost 3 minutes, I think, every day. Yeah, 3 minutes every day. And Lexi was my roommate. I believe she will vouch for me. And it was just like, and I would have, what was it? I think it was an espresso. Yeah, a little espresso every day, because I knew that had caffeine in it. And so hopefully that would help me get through practice and games. And it was like a lot to like think about, but I was so desperate to not let this opportunity get away from me that I was like, it's whatever. I'll journal about myself. I can meditate for 3 minutes minimum, and I'll make sure to have coffee. Like, I had to have coffee and all that stuff. And it was just kind of like the slow evolution of me kind of being more in the present, me being more invested in my teammates, me putting myself out there, because I realized maybe the root of me not actually wanting to say how I felt and kind of being rejected by other people had to do with my own issues. And so it was this really weird process that was kind of forced upon me, but I'm so grateful that it was, because I mean, to this day, almost 2 years later, I still don't take my medication. And yes, there are moments when school comes up that usually all the obstacles of having ADHD show up, but I've worked through it. And a lot of it is conversation with Jolene and through prayer, and just kind of going back to what I know has helped me with just journaling, meditating, prayer, all of that stuff.
Wow. So for athletes and coaches, we talk about this a lot, and you've heard it in real time. Becca's vulnerable enough to say, hey, I have ADHD. Lots of people do. I was on medications for it. I couldn't be on them. So I figured out other ways to do it. You're right. Harvard did a cool study, Harvard University, and looked at meditators and found that one part of the brain grew that helped you be more focused and more calm and more kind and more compassionate. And the part that shrunk guarded our fight or flight system, because meditators are calmer. And when we looked at all the mindfulness studies, 4 things teased out. Now you're going to know why ADHD helps. Better focus, better memory, staying calmer under stress, and increased kindness. Those are the 4 things that people who practice mindfulness or meditation improve upon. Now we know why we're a better student athlete. Not perfect. Our mind still glazes over. But I always say, if athletes would just buy into one thing I teach them, well, there's a second one that I'm going to ask you about, but can you do 5 minutes of mindfulness, 3 minutes? The studies want you to do 20, 30, and that'd be great. But I would say if an athlete could just do 2 minutes of mindfulness where they focus on their breath or whatever. So I am curious. I have one other thing I want to ask you about, but tell us, when you do 3 minutes of mindfulness, what is it? What actually do you do during those 3 minutes?
Yeah. So during season last year, a lot of it was just kind of going through my senses, because I was like, okay, I'm going to do this until I actually hear what's going on. And so just kind of like the refocus of whether I'm just listening or I'm actually seeing and not judging, and just touching and feeling. That alone, I think, would take like 2 minutes if you really go into depth about it, because then once you actually feel the sensations, maybe you can start to go into how you feel about them. Like, oh, I actually like this sensation, or I don't like this sensation. So before you even start to make judgments about them, I think that process alone, so just going through all the different five senses, and then even after that, before you end it, you could go through like a body scan. I mean, really just milk the process of feeling and hearing and just taking in whatever is around you and kind of like what's going on inside.
With a person that has ADHD, even if you don't, a lot of athletes will tell me I'm not good at mindfulness because the minute I try to focus on my senses or my breathing or do a body scan, my mind goes all over the place. Was that a struggle for you at all when we tried to actually focus on something hard?
Yeah, I mean, for sure that is the epitome of having ADHD. And so, I mean, to anybody that's their reasoning for not doing it, that's the exact reason you should be doing it. If you struggle with focusing, work on focusing. I mean, that's the same thing with volleyball. I suck at volleyball. I should practice volleyball so I stop sucking. The process goes with mindfulness. If you're not good at it, practice it. It gets easier. I mean, your brain's not used to being in that state of mindfulness. So the process is going to be kind of messy. It's going to be easy. Some days are going to be better than others. You could be practicing this for a year, but you decide to do it on a super boring day, and for some reason your mind's racing. I mean, it's not this perfect recipe. We're a human body. I mean, we're complex, and it's beautiful and it's messy and all of these things. But when you struggle with mindfulness, you should practice it. Approach mindfulness in the same way you would a sport, because it will enhance your sport like no other. I mean, you want to talk about getting inches on other girls, on other teams, mindfulness is going to set you apart.
Yeah. So one of the things we talk about in our 4Cs is concentration. Part of concentration is focus. Part of concentration is refocus. And when you think about what you're doing with mindfulness, you're focusing on something, body scan, your senses, your breath. And when my mind goes crazy and gets distracted, I bring it back to focus. I'm training focus, refocus.
You know, I think it's very brave and courageous that you're open to talk about that. And several athletes that we serve struggle with that. And some might not even know to the point where it's actually, I should acknowledge it. Was there any shame and understanding that's something that you had? And how were you courageous enough to talk about it like you are with us now?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, every other day, I will say, like, especially on the days that I'm struggling with it, I can get pretty embarrassed. And it's literally just me in my apartment by myself. I'm like, I don't know why I'm embarrassed right now, because it's literally just me. But I think when we pursue all of these things and we have such high standards, when we're not hitting them, it can be quite humbling and frustrating. And I will say that the only way to make actual growth is just being brutally honest with yourself. I think that's what allowed me to put myself out there with my teammates, is I weirdly had to put myself out there with myself and kind of genuinely look in the mirror and acknowledge the kind of teammate I was, acknowledge the kind of person I was, and still am sometimes. But I like to think that I'm a better teammate and I'm a better person from going through that process. Yeah, you gotta be open. I mean, it's a scary process, and that's the risk and reward of really being honest with yourself, is you might find some stuff about yourself that you don't like, that you've been covering up for a lot of years. But when you're able to tap into that, I mean, your fire burns so much brighter. I think when I started being honest with myself about how weird I am as a competitor in a female sport, I mean, some people love it, some people hate it. I roll with the punches. And I know that it gets my teammates amped. Sometimes it doesn't. I mean, that is just the art of being human. We mess up so much. But that's the beauty of it too, is you get that fire from just being rooted and being grounded. And you're like, this is who I am. I know I'm not perfect, and I'm going to work on the qualities that aren't great, but this is who I am. And I'm going to give you my best shot because this is me. And so I think just in that shameful mindset, just know that, like, you're beautiful as you are, and you're a great athlete. And this goes for my men too. I mean, you're beautiful as you are, and you deserve to be yourself. I think in a world where everyone's just trying to impress one another, and even in athletes, everyone wants to look cool. And with NIL, everyone just wants to have this profile of I'm perfect and I'm a great athlete and I look hot all the time. We don't. We're not. I mean, that's just the reality of sport. It brings out the worst in us and it brings out the best in us. There are going to be cool pictures. There's going to be ugly pictures. And just be really honest with yourself. Be honest with your teammates. And I think you're going to tap into that, like that stone cold killer that you've always wanted to be.
We say vulnerability is a strength, but this is a new one that you're highlighting, is that you're unapologetically you, right? You're authentic, and it took time, a lot of failure, a lot of success, a lot of moments where you're like, oh, is that really me? That is me. And there have been several athletes, Becca, and I'll just give you some encouragement, that love the way that you show up on the court. And it wasn't always about these big blocks, but it was about how you made eye contact. You were a case study, for some teams out here in Arizona this past high school season over here, and I'll shout them out. They ended up winning 6A right here, which is the highest class in Arizona. But we did a case study with you, and it wasn't necessarily about all the great blocks. We knew you were a great blocker, but we saw how you celebrated, how you turned to your teams, how you made eye contact, or maybe how a little bit of frustration you showed when you missed your assignment, but how was your response? And so you being you gave you the freedom to compete for your team and to be in such great relationship that in those moments like the Wisconsin match, you just looked at each other and was like, we're good, next ball, right? Even though the emotion probably didn't feel like that, but you knew that there was an unwavering trust that no matter what, I'm in this, with you. And I think that's the cool part about it, is you being you're impacting a lot of people. Doc, I'll turn it to you.
By the way, she was referring to Sandra Day O'Connor High School and Coach Amanda Burbridge. So, because they did make history. They won state for the first time, and it's pretty cool. So, all right, Becca, one of the things that high-performing athletes, especially females, struggle with the most, I'm not saying you do, but I wonder if you've ever struggled with your self-talk. And if you have, what's it been like, and what have you done about it?
Yeah, for sure. It has not always been great. I mean, it's still not great to this very moment. Just kind of back to what I was saying, just the ups and downs of being a human being. It's never going to be perfect as badly as you want it to be. Even on the days where you think it is, you're just doing really good that day. And so I will say my self-talk has been more encouraging, and just thinking about the way I would want to talk to, like, say, God willing, I get to have a daughter one day, and like, how would I want to talk to her? Or even younger Becca, like, Becca, like, you did your best, and it kind of sucks that it didn't go your way, but just really tapping into like nurturing myself as an athlete, and in an environment where we go hard and we push ourselves. I will say, when I'm in the gym on the exterior, I'm not satisfied when it doesn't go well. I'm not. But on the inside, it's like, I'm pushing myself because I genuinely believe I'm capable of more. And when I don't, that's usually when I go harder, because I want to silence that voice of doubt. And so sometimes I'm not the great teammate. I have stiff high fives. I lack eye contact. But then I'm like, you're missing out on a growing opportunity. And there's some days I leave the gym and I have regrets, and it sucks, because it's like, that was a missed opportunity. Because maybe it wasn't even about volleyball that day. Maybe it was just about me leaning into my accountability partner. And Andy Jackson's my she was my accountability partner this last season. And I'm grateful for it, because we are both incredibly hard on ourselves. And there have been days where it's been great. There have been days that it hasn't been. And through it all, we leaned into each other. And it was really cool to grow in my relationship, because she was actually one of the only girls I hadn't gotten the opportunity to play USA with. And we're the same position. And so going through this season with her has just been really fun. And yeah, I mean, just some days it's, I don't know, just the self-talk it hasn't always been great, and it's still in the works. But I will say a defining moment for me about how I want to talk to myself was knowing that our brain doesn't know the difference between like sarcasm and stuff like that when we talk to ourselves. So you may say like, dang, Beck, I suck. Like, you may laugh it off, but when you constantly say these things to yourself, it doesn't know the difference between like what's a joke and what's not. And it will tear you down over time. I mean, and so I started, being a little bit more chipper. I'm like, oh, you got the next one. Like, when I would do something good, I'd be like, good job, Becca, on the inside, or even like a little fist bump, like, good job, Becca. And it was kind of weird at first, but it felt so good. And just getting to have that little moment with myself of kind of patting myself on the back, you kind of feel like a little kid again, like you want to keep trying and all that stuff. And so it was a huge game changer. And I plan on taking it forward through my career. I don't care how old I get, just being more encouraging with myself.
But first, we have to be aware that my self-talk could wear me down. Even if it's just sort of making light of it, right? Like I suck and kind of joking, but it's not. And then my strategy, just to be a little bit more encouraging, but how many athletes have we talked to that says, if I could just learn to talk to myself like I would talk to my daughter or to my friend, I would never say those things to her. Why would I say them to me? That whatever strategies you come up with have to be acknowledged that the self-talk's hurting me, and then replace it with something. So, Jess, anything further on self-talk that you want to explore?
I do. Let's go back to that national championship night before, a couple days before. You played on some of the biggest stages for the University of Nebraska, for the U.S. feeder teams, or even your local state, right? Those big, big moments, everything's on the line, survive and advance. You have a role to play for your team. We know there's so much other noise that goes into those things. How is your self-talk in those moments when you have to block out noise that maybe doesn't concern the moment at hand, good or bad? And how does that, I should rephrase this. How do you block out the noise so it doesn't hinder your self-talk going into those big championship moments?
Yeah, that was not an easy process. Just the media that is involved at the Final Four is absolutely insane. It felt like a camera was on you at all times. Anytime you were doing something cute, there was a camera on you, and now you're starting to think, was that, and now am I being ingenuine type thing? Like, am I staging this? When really you were just enjoying yourself, but now you feel the need to impress the camera. I mean, it was just this little internal battle. And I think what helped my self-talk was just kind of allowing myself to be in the moment. If I wanted to be funny for the camera, be funny for the camera, and don't be mean to myself about it. Like Kelly Hunter, she made a great point that a lot of the teams that end up doing really well are the ones that just they take in the moment, and they savor everything. I mean, we had an opportunity to go out on a boat, and we danced and we went hard, and it was super fun. And everyone's like, "You guys were dancing that poor game?" We're like, "Yeah." I mean, why not? When are we gonna get this opportunity again? And it was a really fun time. And I think just allowing myself to kind of have fun with the media instead of, oh, I need to keep everything away. In reality, I couldn't. And there was journalists there. They were wanting to know what was going through my mind, the gameplay and stuff like that. So just not being so hard on myself and expecting myself to be perfect with everything kind of allowed me to go back into that childlike mindset of, just keep doing your best. And I know you're excited about the media, but like, you need to focus on this. And why are you actually here? And who needs me right now? And am I focused on the cameras, or am I focused on my teammates? And just kind of doing my best to meet myself where I'm at helped a lot with all of the noise.
You're having conversations with yourself a lot. And I think that's mindfulness, right? Is awareness of, all right, there's a camera in my face. Okay, wait, coach wants me to do this. Okay, my team might need to do this. Acknowledge the camera. Now we refocus to what matters most. And so it's a lot of that, what Doc said, that concentration, focus, refocus. And here's my thing is, were you taught how to do this at a young age, right? With cameras in your face all the time? Were you taught, right, that you're always going to play in these big Final Fours? I mean, that's one of the reasons why you are recruited. And I think your commitment level and your physical, right, your mindfulness up to that point, that's why you chose Nebraska. But giving yourself grace in the moment to understand, hey, I'm going to be where my feet are. And whatever happens, happens. And if I need to refocus, I'm going to.
One of the things that you did is you put out your big goal out there, and you took it back to even maybe a disappointment that you had when Waverly lost in 5 your senior year. You had 37 kills in that match, just for people to know that. I don't know if it was a record in the state, but it was an unbelievable performance, but the team fell short a little bit, right? And you use that, from the way I gathered it, as fuel to some degree to shout out your big goals for this year. I'm wondering, when you put it out there like that and then you fall short, How do you navigate that as a person when you put it out there that we're going to win this national championship and we didn't win it because there's a winner and a loser, right? And in terms of just the outcome, how do you navigate that as Becca, as an athlete, when you put it out there for everyone to hear and then we fall short?
Yeah, it's not easy. People love to poke fun, and I've been telling myself this a lot lately, that usually when it comes to moments like this where it's bad for the image, I'm just like, every day is a great day to be humbled. I'm kind of, it gets you off your high horse really quick. It reminds you that you're just another person, just another person of the community, and you have cool opportunities, but you are no better than the person next to you. And when you are achieving good things or big things, there is a chance of failure and big failure. Yeah, it's not easy. It's really frustrating and it's demoralizing, and yeah, just another day of being a human, and it sucks when it doesn't go your way because it feels like cloud nine when everything's going your way and people are congratulating you on the street, and there's cool posters going up and banners and trophies and confetti, but when you don't, people notice, and especially when everybody was counting on you, and it's just like, yeah, sorry about that, but I'm only human and I did my best, and I'm turning 20 here soon, and it's like there's so much to life that I should be excited for, and just to let this sport get in the way of me being able to enjoy other things would be silly, and I'd miss out on a lot of great things that life still has to offer. And so when I am knocked off my high horse about the goals I did set, just remind yourself that it's a good day. Every day is a good day to be humbled.
Wow. Such good stuff. All right. At the very beginning, when I asked you about maxing out, you were talking about what you have to do day by day. And Coach Cook and I talk about this a lot. Like, how do you go from good to great? It's probably more than good. It's very good. But again, I know you have bigger goals individually, at least in terms of individual awards. I know those aren't your most important, but you've been second team all Big Ten, right? Pretty cool in a conference like that. But as an individual first, and I'm going to ask you the same thing about what you think about your team. How do you go from good to great in 2024 from an individual standpoint? How do you do that?
I think like the scariest thing about being an athlete and a college athlete and wanting to pursue big things, it's like, can I take my game to the next level? So even just asking yourself that question can be a little nerve-wracking, because then it kind of makes, at least for me personally, it makes everything I've achieved feel so small. Because if I'm pursuing all of this, I'm now asking everything that I've just pursued, can I do better? And it's kind of hard. You have to get, it's another day of humbling yourself. It's like, can I do better? What can I do better? Will I be able to do it in this time frame? And it's daunting and it's scary, but for people that love challenges, and I don't know, they just love the chase and they love the journey. It's kind of exciting. I think just even for me, it's a little bit of go back and forth. It's like, oh, like, what can I do to improve my game? Because I know there's a lot to improve. But like, what can I actually do? Like, what can I actually get done this season? And am I going to put in the work and all of this? It's a little daunting, but it's a little exciting, because now I have something to pursue again in the gym. It's not just this, I'm going to show up and do what I've always done and hope it works out. I mean, that's what Albert Einstein considered insanity. So you just really ask yourself, like, even if it's just refining, going out to the gym a little bit earlier, I don't know, like, just find little things. If you genuinely believe every part of your sport you have technically sound, I would consider going professional, because you really have no business being a collegiate athlete. But if you don't, then reflect on, okay, why don't you think you can go professional? And then kind of go from there. I mean, go back to being a kid again when you were super excited about the sport because you remember that it was fun and that you didn't know how to play it yet. But now you know how to play it, but how can you perfect it, type of thing.
Mm-hmm. I'm assuming you will have the same outcome goal for 2024 with your team.
Yeah.
Give us a couple tangible things, in your opinion, that would allow Nebraska to get back to that title game, because that's not easy. right? To actually get there and then have a different outcome.
Yeah. I just say mindfulness. I think the easy part is pursuing what we can do with our body as an athlete. I mean, we're told to go to the gym, we're told to go to practice, but just doing the visual work. I mean, even watching film, just watching the sport. It's really fun to watch the men professional because they're getting so creative. They almost seem bored sometimes with the stuff they come up with. And so it's fun to see how they navigate a different defense and all of that stuff. But I will forever recommend mindfulness first and foremost, because I believe it not only improves you as an individual athlete, but it will create or develop you into a better teammate, in which the culture will just, exponentially grow when everyone genuinely invests on getting their mind right.
Yeah. As we say many times, you must have the talent to compete for championships.
Mm-hmm.
And in my observation and experience, it's the teams that crush the non-technical aspects of their sport. Some of it's selflessness and role acceptance, building in mindfulness and mindset training. That generally is the separator. If you don't have the talent, it doesn't matter. You can't compete for it all. But the teams that find a way to win it all tend to do the non-technical aspects of their sport really well. I have one more question, but I'm going to save it. Jess, any further thoughts?
I think Jill Ellis, the former U.S. women's national soccer team coach, said the people that you see on the way up are the same people you see on the way down. And that resonates, with your quote that every day is a good day to be humbled. And I want to circle back to that, because being humbled is a great thing. Going through adversity is a great thing. Learning is a great thing. My last question for you is, if you could go back to, let's say, your 14-year-old self, what would you tell her?
Oh, man, my friend.
You love this question. You know you do.
I do. It's, I don't know, 14-year-old Becca. Oh, I would say just to continue to put yourself out there and don't hide how much this game excites you and upsets you and just does for you. I mean, it is an outlet and God's going to do really big things with it. But watch the swearing. Try and get rid of that from the beginning. I'm not proud of that. I'm really not. I'm going to do better with that this next season. Is it going to be great? Probably not. Let's be real. But yeah, don't hide how much this game, like what all this game brings out of you. Just be yourself. Not everyone's going to like you, and that's okay, but just be yourself.
And may you hear that as you start this spring, and everything that it asks of you, all of the blood, sweat, tears, time, sacrifices. Listen to what you just said. Don't fall out of love with the game that you started playing when you were younger, and continue to be unapologetically you. Okay, Doc.
That's just so awesome for me, because my last question was tied into what she said she wanted to do better, which was, and I find it interesting, but I'm curious why you said it and when you said it. But you had a teammate in when you guys were being interviewed after the game against Texas, who made reference to winning multiple national championships, and you said, "F yeah."
Yep, sure did.
Why did you say it? And what does it mean, honestly?
I like it when people are bold. And obviously, if you couldn't tell by my current state, I was quite a wreck. And I was kind of just mad at the world at that moment and mad at the sport. But I think just hearing girls that you were in the battle with, I don't know, I could feel her angst. And it's like, it's not even like the word. She could have literally said something else. But just hearing like that kind of like punch you in the face, I was like, yeah. Like, yeah, that's what I want everyone to feel.
Yeah, it was just being authentic, isn't it? Right. So, wow, what a great hour we've had, Coach Jess, with Becca.
Yeah, this is fun.
We knew this was gonna. Do you have any last things that you have any thoughts at all? Anything we didn't ask you, or anything that you want to share with your community of people that listen?
Man, I just can't put out enough to athletes that go and make friends with people that aren't athletes. You want to talk about being humbled? you want to talk about being in a humble spirit, go put yourself out into the community, whether it's your church, whether it's with clubs, it could be a book club. Go put yourself out, invest in yourself other than in the sport, and you're going to find yourself treat others better. And just remember that you're not this big shot. I mean, it's hard out here. Like, people, they love sports. They love to celebrate us. And so when you're constantly in the state of being celebrated, you remember that not every day is a celebration. And so kind of invest in your community and just, I don't know, I can't emphasize that enough. Just go make friends with people that could not care less about, like, they could not care all about your sport. Because I have one of my best friends. She doesn't even like the sport of volleyball. She's like, you know what, Becca, I'm gonna be really honest with you. I didn't go to the Memorial game. And I was like, you know what? That's fascinating, because I have yet to meet one person that hasn't. And it was just interesting, because I'm like, all right, then what do you do? And she's like, I watch other sports. And it was just like this really cool environment to be in, where it's like something that I've identified and hold on to for so long, she could literally care less about. And so it was just this character development, and it's been great. I mean, we're best friends now. And so, yeah, just put yourself out there in the community as something other than an athlete.
I met Becca when she was 16 or 17. First thing I thought of, open, vulnerable, honest. And now 3 years later, just, elevation in all those areas into a mature, really full-grown woman who's still developing, obviously, but unbelievable growth in the last few years that you've done most of that work yourself, which is really, really cool from my vantage point. So
Thank you.
Coach Jess and I really, really thank you for being on the Max Out Mindset podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
Physical abilities such as strength, speed, agility, endurance, and coordination are fundamental in sports. But mental abilities such as focus, concentration, motivation, confidence, resilience, and decision-making can heavily influence an athlete's performance, especially when it matters the most. If you want the mental edge in sport and life, check out the Max Out Mindset for Volleyball book and workbook, or the Max Out Mindset for Softball book and workbook. A guide for coaches, athletes, teams, and parents to help you be in the best position to max out when it matters the most.